So we've been doing the presidents and black people, presidents and Native Americans, presidents and just marginalized people of color. And we are discussing Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president of the United States. And oh my Lord, I have read a lot of, was Roosevelt racist? Or was Roosevelt racist? You decide. I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it because I've been reading a lot of those about the president. The title is, was insert name of president here racist? If you have to ask the question, the answer is probably yes. And in this particular instance, yes. Yes, he was. Yes, he was. I'm getting ahead of myself. They asked the question because Roosevelt hated slavery. So, if the writer had done any research, they would have learned that the only reason Roosevelt hated slavery was because slavery brought the black man to the United States, and Roosevelt hated the black man. That was the only reason why Roosevelt hated slavery, was because it brought the black man to the United States, and he wanted the United States to be a country of white people. Okay, let's move on before I lose it. Okay, no, hold on. These articles kill me, asking if the former presidents, especially slaveholding presidents, were racist because they were men of their time, owning black people and exploiting their labor, taking away their civil rights, their ability to marry, to raise their families, beating them, selling them, all solely based on the color of their skin, also to make money. Yeah, racist. I think that's the simplest definition of the term for that period in time, and the inability to see that is the definition of willful ignorance. Oh my God. Now, let's get started. Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt believed fundamentally that American greatness came from its rule by racially superior white men of European descent. Racist! Right there! Racist! Anyways, he believed in European colonialism. He says, I am a believer in the fact that it is for the good of the world that the English-speaking race in all its branches should hold as much of the world's surface as possible. The spread of the little kingdom of Wessex into more than a country, more than an empire, into a race which has conquered half the earth and holds a quarter of it, is perhaps the greatest fact in all of history. If you don't understand where the racism is in that, then you are willfully lying to yourself. You have chosen ignorance. But I digress. Journalist Jeremy Hobson writes, he was a white supremacist. One of your own is telling you. But he was a fierce opponent of slavery. He regarded slavery as a sin visited upon America by aristocratic Englishmen who came close to ruining the experiment of America by placing people of African descent on his glorious continent. He continues, there's a part of Roosevelt who believes sincerely and deeply in America as an opportunity for every man and every woman. But he also believes deeply in racial nationalism. America is a land for racially superior peoples descended from Europeans, not a place for Asians, not a place for blacks, not a place for Indians, not a place for Latinos. Roosevelt believed in the existence of a racial hierarchy which shaped his attitudes on race relations, land rights, American imperialism, and the emerging science of eugenics. Now, eugenics is the scientifically inaccurate theory that humans can be improved through selective breeding of populations. American eugenicists tended to believe in the genetic superiority of Nordic, Germanic, and Anglo-Saxon peoples, supported strict immigration and anti-miscegenation laws, and supported the forcible sterilization of the poor, disabled, and immoral. Eugenics would eventually lead to the forced sterilization of Black, Mexican, and Native American women in this country, and the Holocaust. That's what eugenics would lead to. Roosevelt maintained that although white men held firm at the top of the social hierarchy, inferior races could rise from their lower stations. He believed that individuals could learn positive traits within their lifetime and assumed racial mobility was within human control, says Michael Patrick Cullinane, a history professor at London's University of Roehampton and author of Theodore Roosevelt's Ghost, The History and Memory of an American Icon. When it came to black people, he believed that black people were inept. He said, "I do not believe that the average Negro in the United States is as yet in any way fit to take care of himself and others as the average white man, for if he were, there would be no Negro problem." There was no Negro problem. Actually, the Negro problem was that they existed in the United States. In a 1906 letter, he wrote, "As a race and in the mass, they are altogether inferior to the whites." 10 years later, he would tell Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, "The great majority of Negroes in the South are wholly unfit for the suffrage, and that giving them voting rights could reduce parts of the South to the level of Haiti." He did little to preserve black suffrage in the South, as those states increasingly disenfranchised blacks. Roosevelt continued to speak out against lynchings, but did little to advance the cause of black civil rights. Roosevelt defended Minnie Cox, the country's first black female postmaster, after she was driven out of Indianola, Mississippi, because of the color of her skin. He appointed black Americans to prominent positions, such as his nomination of William Crum, a customs collector in Charleston, South Carolina, which drew considerable political opposition, and this was his response: "I cannot consent to take the position that the door of hope, the door of opportunity, is to be shut upon any man, no matter how worthy, purely upon the grounds of race or color." But then, in 1906, a small group of black soldiers were accused of going on a shooting spree in Brownsville, Texas, unaliving one white man and wounding another. Despite conflicting accounts and the lack of physical evidence, the Army assumed the guilt of the black soldiers. When not one of them admitted responsibility, an irritated Roosevelt ordered the dishonorable discharge of 3 companies of black soldiers, 160 men, without a trial. Roosevelt and the white establishment had assumed the soldiers were guilty without affording them the opportunity for a trial to confront their accusers or prove their innocence. Dishonorably discharged 160 black soldiers without a trial. You see, Theodore Roosevelt held nothing but contempt for black soldiers. Prior to becoming president, during the Spanish and American War, he held the belief that black men made poor soldiers. He denigrated the efforts of the Buffalo Soldiers who fought alongside his men at San Juan Hill during the Spanish-American War, falsely claiming that they ran away under fire. He says Negro troops were shirkers in their duties and would only go as far as they were led by white officers. In reality, the Buffalo Soldiers served with distinction, and several men were officially recognized for their bravery. 26 died on the slopes of San Juan Hill. He also had a dim view of Native Americans. Oh, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. Tomorrow, we will continue our conversation about Theodore Roosevelt and Native Americans.